The trick is to change the state of mind to disarm it, to take its defenses down or otherwise modify them so they're no longer very efficient. And the material can go right into the subconscious without any kind of interference, judgment, or processing. Plunk right in. All right, Stephen, the techniques used to put the mind or the consciousness into an altered state, take it from beta down through alpha into theta, so it's mesmerized. And when it's in that state, and it's usually the old television flicker, although with HD, I'm not sure the flicker is still there anymore. What it would do, it would, in a matter of seconds, like the first time takes about a minute, but after that it's just seconds, put the mind into a state where anything it was absorbing would simply go right past all filters and into the subconscious and wait there to be called up when the proper stimulation was encountered. Tell us more.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. The most successful propaganda uses the arts and entertainment as a delivery system. And television is a good example of explaining both the principles of hypnotic programming as well as the techniques. I'd say that television is by far the most powerful weapon of psychological warfare in history. And I consider that so important. And yet, many people, if not most, don't think of television in those terms, as a weapon.
How people think of television as simply an elective choice in terms of entertainment and information, when in point of fact, the television is the boss.
Yes, and it's illustrating how we are taught what's right and wrong, what's acceptable and unacceptable behavior, to storytelling. Storytelling is the oldest means of transmitting information about how society works. There isn't much difference between primitive man sitting fixated in front of the flickering light of a campfire, telling stories about how things work, transmitting information from one generation to the next. Not much difference between that and modern man sitting fixated in front of the flickering light of a television, receiving information, the same kind of information, how society works, what's acceptable and unacceptable behavior, what's right and wrong. The first order of business for a propagandist or an advertiser is to create the circumstances that are going to induce a state of mind that is most favorable to the reception of their message. That state of mind is the hypnotic state of mind. The state of mind, natural, we go in and out of it throughout the day. It's a twilight state of mind in which there is no conscious mental activity going on. The mind is a blank slate, and it is in this state of mind where we are highly suggestible and more vulnerable to manipulation than at any other time. Television induces this state of mind in the viewer naturally and automatically because of the nature of the medium. And we can even catch ourselves when we're in front of a TV going into that state of losing all sense of time and place. We're simply there. We're soaking up information like a sponge. The television is literally plugging into our nervous system. It's a literal interfacing of the electronic media with our nervous system. Back in the late 1990s, 700 children had to be hospitalized in response to watching a TV cartoon. This happened in Japan.
Japan, yep, I remember.
The cartoon was the highly popular Pokemon. The press all over the world reported on this incident. What happened was that strobing flashes of light pulsated from the eyes of one of the cartoon characters, and this caused epileptic-like seizures.
Although music is quite compelling in its own cadences as well. It's an all-fronts assault on you to disarm you and make you amenable to all kinds of input, which they design ever so carefully. Nothing is really left to chance. Stephen, please go ahead.
Regarding children and television, prior to the advent of TV, you never heard about attention deficit disorder.
Didn't exist. Nope.
And what's happening here is that the quick cutting patterns that were developed in TV commercials and music videos, they cause a corresponding chemical electrical impulse in the brain. And that releases endorphins that have a drug-like effect on the body. So a child can sit motionless, fixated, watching television, and when they're away from the television, they have all this nervous energy, can't focus, their attention, can't sit still. And that's because they're looking for the same kind of drug-like effect that they're getting from TV and other kinds of activities, and they're not getting it. Another illustration of this plug-in effect that television has with our nervous system, because we've already been changed as a population by the illustration of hypnotic programming. Using, for another example, the news broadcast that everyone has grown familiar with, both your national news and your local news broadcaster. If you think about it, regardless of the background of the newscaster, regardless of their ethnic background, whether they be black, white, Oriental, Hispanic, doesn't matter. With few exceptions, they all speak the same way. They have a pattern of speaking that the public has been conditioned to accept as the means by which we receive true factual information. The newscaster looks directly into the camera and into the eyes of the viewer, which is another hypnotic technique. The newscaster is an authority figure, which is another element. People will tend to accept information, even if they don't understand it, if it is coming from an accepted and respected authority, and then the information repeated over and over and over again until it becomes a conditioned response. This not only happened in the days of television, but even before television, in radio. The famous broadcast of Orson Welles' dramatization of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds caused panic in this country.
No, classic.
Yes, people actually thought New Jersey was being invaded by Martians.
Well, I would have if I'd have been back there then. It
Well,
was done very
the reason
realistically.
for it was that the dramatization was done as a news broadcast.
Yeah. And news even then was considered hallowed ground in terms of questioning it. I mean, that was the oracle of God, news.
Yes.
And
And
hold on.
it shows that even then, the population had been programmed and conditioned to accept the format as the means by
There you
which
go.
we receive true, factual information.
Exactly
and,
right.
And
Yeah.
it just wasn't so.
Isn't it amazing the amount of sophisticated, absolutely complete control that they're working toward now, cradle to grave?
Well,
Yeah.
it only shows their paranoia and their fear.
Correct.
They're afraid of us.
They have fear too. You see, they keep us entrained and entranced via fear, anxiety, anticipation, and all the rest of those related synonyms. And yet, on the other side of the coin, they themselves are driven by fear that we might become out of control.
And wake up.
Right?
And that's what they're trying to prevent. And that's essentially a spiritual condition. The mind control issue is first and foremost a spiritual issue. Its foundation is spiritual. The mind is the gateway to the soul. That's why there's mind control issue. And we, in mass, humanity, is at the threshold of an awakening that they seek to prevent. Because if people wake up means come into an awareness, a spiritual realization. Because that's the only thing that's going to solve the problems that we face. They're just so basic and fundamental. We're not going to fix things with Band-Aid measures, trying to tinker here and there and fix the economy. You're not going to fix the economy without attending to the issue of honest weights and measures and an honest medium of exchange as the lifeblood of commerce. The dishonest money system has corrupted all segments of society, including organized religion, which is part of the problem. This is the mind control issue is a spiritual issue. And the fundamental problem for mankind is that we have been encouraged to misidentify ourselves as the physical body. And when people do that, then they become fearful because the body is subject to death. And by keeping people afraid and stressed out and great anxiety, prolonged periods of time is a strategy of psychological warfare, because then people can't think clearly. Add to this the manipulation of economic factors, and you have a twin pincer movement where the population is literally being squeezed. The nation is suffering from the effects of a scientifically induced nervous breakdown. That's what we're seeing all around us. We are the first media generation that caused a psychological standardization that later was fragmented, and so that different groups can be spoken to individually and programmed individually. The real issue, it's a spiritual issue, and spiritual consciousness is the only solution to the problems and suffering of material existence, and it's on that platform where we have our power, because it requires us to look within for the answers, and that's the only way we're going to find them. We've been conditioned to look outside of ourselves for the answers and to use our mind in an analytical way to think our way out of a problem.
Right.
Thinking got us into this mess.
It sure did.
And the quality of our thinking has to change. We haven't been taught how to think. We've been taught what to think. And God forbid that we learn how to think, because that's what these guys are afraid of. There are more of us than there are of them, and the only way they can control and manipulate the large masses is through illusion and deception.
And
it's like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Exactly. And the cultivation of this anxiety and fear is astoundingly profitable. Look at the psychopharmacological maniacs at work coming up with these fluoride-based drugs, SSRIs, all kinds of psychotropic medications, which literally, if the television and the lifestyle and the peer pressure and the media and the self-absorption and the narcissism of the physical body doesn't do it, these drugs will. And they'll seal the individual permanently into a crypt of morose behavior and absolute obedience to a paradigm that is antithetical to human life as it used to be.